Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Hub. Today's story is one of my favorites.
You know how some stories begin with a single moment that changes everything? Mine started with a lie. Not a malicious one, mind you, but a kind of lie that wraps around your heart like silk beautiful, protective and impossible to untangle, without losing a piece of yourself. I was 23, living in a cramped studio apartment above a bakery in the French Quarter of New Orleans. The smell of fresh bayonets would wake me every morning at 5:30, and I'd stumble through. My tiny kitchen, coffee in hand, preparing for another day of rejection. You see, I was a dancer, I'm a dancer, and in this city where jazz flows through the streets like honey, contemporary dance was about as welcome as a tourist in a second line parade. Every morning, I'd check my phone before my feet even hit the floor, not for missed calls or Instagram likes, but for a message from someone I'd never met, someone who knew me better than anyone in my physical world. Dance Spirit. That's all I knew him as, this mysterious person who'd been my confidant, my cheerleader, my anchor for 5 years. Good morning, beautiful soul, his message would read. Tell me about your dreams last night. And I would. I'd tell him everything about the audition that went wrong, about the way my body moved when I thought no one was watching, about the fear that lived in my chest like a caged bird, always fluttering, always reminding me that I wasn't good enough. He never judged. Never made me feel small. In a world where my body was constantly scrutinized, measured, found wanting, he saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. The thing is, I'd fallen in love with a ghost. How do you love someone you've never touched? Someone whose laugh you've never heard, whose eyes you've never looked into? But I did. God help me, I did. The night that changed everything started like so many others. I was at the studio rehearsing for what felt like the 1,000th audition of my career. The Louisiana School of Contemporary Dance was holding tryouts for their summer intensive, and I just knew this was my shot. My last shot, really. At 23, I was already aging out of the ingenue roles, and my savings account was as empty as my love life. I'd been working on this piece for months. A solo that told the story of a woman trapped between two worlds, the one she knew and the one she dreamed of. The irony wasn't lost on me. There I was, pouring my heart into a dance about being trapped, while I lived in my own beautiful prison of secrets and digital love. My phone buzzed. Dance Spirit. How's the preparation going, fierce one? I smiled. Despite my exhaustion, even through a screen, he could sense my mood. Terrible, I typed back. I keep messing up the transition in the second movement. It's like my body forgets how to move when it matters most. The reply came instantly. Your body doesn't forget. Your mind interferes. Trust the 5 years of work you've put in. Trust me. Trust him. If only he knew how much I already did. If only he knew that I'd turned down dates, avoided relationships, built walls around my heart because some part of me was waiting for him to become real. I was about to respond when the studio door creaked open. My best friend Lena burst in, her wild curls escaping from a hastily thrown-up ponytail, her cheeks flushed from the humidity outside. Becca, she called out, using the nickname that only she and my grandmother had ever used. Pack your hiking boots. We're going on an adventure this weekend, I groaned audibly. Lena was one of those people who believed fresh air and physical challenges could cure anything from heartbreak to writer's block. She was also the only person who knew about Dance Spirit, though she'd been increasingly vocal about her opinion that I was wasting my life on a fantasy. I can't, I said, not looking up from my phone. The audition is in 2 weeks. I need to practice. The audition will still be there on Monday, she said, crossing her arms. But this weekend, there's a group hiking trip to the Kizachi National Forest. New people, new energy. When's the last time you talked to someone face to face who wasn't me or your ballet teacher? I wanted to argue, but she had a point. My social circle had shrunk to the size of a teacup, and I'd become one of those people who felt more comfortable texting than talking. Still, the thought of spending a weekend with strangers, pretending to be someone I wasn't, made my stomach churn. She's trying to get me to go hiking. I messaged Dan Spirit. Save me. Go, came his immediate response. When's the last time you did something that scared you for a reason other than career advancement? I stared at the screen. He was right, of course. He was always right. But what if I make a fool of myself? Then you'll have a good story to tell me afterward. And that's how I found myself the following Saturday morning, standing in the parking lot of a visitor center I'd never heard of, wearing borrowed hiking boots and a backpack that was probably older than I was. The group was small, maybe 8 people total, and they all seemed to know each other. I felt like an imposter, which was becoming a familiar feeling. That's when I saw her. She was standing near the trail map, pointing outwards to another hiker, her voice carrying just enough to make me turn around. Dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, strong shoulders, hands that moved when she talked. There was something about her that made me pause, made me forget to breathe for just a moment. Pay attention, whispered a voice in my head. Not Dance Spirit's voice, but something deeper, more primal. The trail was more challenging than I'd expected, which wasn't saying much since I'd expected a leisurely walk through pretty trees with him. The first hour, I was sweating through my t-shirt and questioning every life choice that had led me to this moment. The other hikers were patient, but clearly more experienced, and I found myself falling behind, my dancer's muscles protesting this new form of movement. I was focusing so intently on not tripping over a root that I didn't see the branch until it was too late. I stumbled forward, my ankle twisting, certain I was about to face plant into the Louisiana dirt. Instead, I felt strong hands catch me, steadying me with surprising gentleness. Easy there, said a voice that made something in my chest flutter. You're not much of an outdoors person, are you? I looked up into warm brown eyes that seemed to see right through me. The woman from the parking lot. Up close, she was even more striking, with laugh lines that suggested she smiled often and forearms that spoke of a life spent doing more than sitting at a desk. Is it that obvious? I asked, trying to laugh off my embarrassment. The brand new hiking boots were a dead giveaway, she said, her smile taking the sting out of the observation. I'm Hope, Rebecca. I tested her name in my mouth, liking the way it felt. And thank you. For the save, I mean. Anytime. She didn't let go of my arm immediately, and I found myself studying her face, searching for something I couldn't. Name, you remind me of someone. Before I could ask what she meant, the group was moving again, and the moment passed. But something had shifted. I found myself hiking closer to Hope, drawn by her easy confidence and the way she seemed to know exactly where she was going. She pointed out plants I'd never noticed, told stories about previous hikes, and somehow made me feel like I belonged in this wilderness that was so foreign to me. So what do you do? She asked as we navigated a particularly rocky section of trail when you're not getting rescued by strangers in the woods. I'm a dancer, I said, then immediately felt the need to qualify. Contemporary dance. I'm auditioning for a summer intensive in a couple of weeks. That's incredible. I bet you move like poetry. Something in her tone made me glance over, but she was focused on the trail ahead. What about you? I'm a choreographer. Or trying to be. Mostly I teach fitness classes and dream of bigger things. My heart skipped. A choreographer. What kind of choreography? Contemporary, mostly. Some jazz. I love the way movement can tell stories that words can't. She paused, then added, I've been working on a piece about long-distance relationships. The intimacy of knowing someone. completely while being physically apart. I stumbled again, this time over my own feet rather than forest debris. Hope's hand shot out to steady me again, and this time the contact felt electric. Sorry, I mumbled. I'm usually more coordinated than this. It's the boots, she said kindly. They'll break in. But it wasn't the boots. It was the way she described her choreography, the way it echoed my own experience so perfectly. It was the growing feeling that this meeting wasn't coincidental, that the universe had orchestrated this moment for reasons I couldn't yet understand. We hiked in comfortable silence for a while, the Louisiana heat building around us despite the canopy of trees. The other hikers had spread out along the trail, some ahead, some behind, and I found myself essentially alone with Hope. She moved with the fluid grace of someone who understood her body, who trusted it completely. I recognized that quality because I'd spent years trying to cultivate it in myself. Can I ask you something? She said suddenly. Of course. Why did you really come on this hike? You seem like someone who'd rather be in a studio than in the woods. I considered lying, giving her the easy answer about wanting to try new things. Instead, I found myself telling the truth. My friend Lena thinks I spend too much time alone. She's probably right. I've been isolated lately. Focused on my career, but also just hiding, I guess. Hiding from what? The question hung between us like a bridge I wasn't sure I was ready to cross. From disappointment, from rejection, from the possibility that I'm not as good as I think I am. Hope stopped walking and turned to face me. Her expression was so understanding, so kind, that I felt tears prick at my eyes. I get that, she said softly. I've been hiding too. From different things, but I understand. What are you hiding from? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The possibility that I'm not brave enough to go after what I really want. Before I could ask what she meant, the sky opened up. Louisiana storms don't mess around. One minute we were having a deep conversation, under dappled sunlight. The next we were being pelted by rain that felt like it was coming from a fire hose. The other hikers scattered, some running back toward the parking lot, others seeking shelter under whatever coverage they could find. Hope grabbed my hand. There's a trail shelter about a quarter-mile ahead. Can you make it? I nodded, though. I wasn't sure. The trail had turned into a slip and slide, and my borrowed boots were proving as treacherous as Hope had predicted. But her hand in mine was warm and strong, and I found myself following her with complete trust. The shelter turned out to be a small wooden cabin, probably built by the Park Service for exactly this type of emergency. It was basic: 4 walls, a roof, and a bench, but it was dry. We tumbled inside, breathless and soaked, and suddenly the world felt very small and very intimate. Well, I said, trying to break the tension with humor, this is cozy. Hope laughed, a sound that sent warmth through my chest. She was wringing rain from her hair, and I found myself mesmerized by the way the water droplets caught the dim light, filtering through the cabin's single window. You know, she said, her voice thoughtful, this reminds me of something someone once told me, about how the best conversations happen when you're trapped together, when you can't escape or hide behind your usual defenses. My phone buzzed. A text from Dance Spirit. Tell me about your day, beautiful soul. I pulled out my phone to respond, but noticed Hope's eyes flicker to the screen. Something in her expression shifted, became more focused, more intent. Dance Spirit? She asked casually. My heart stopped. How did you? Lucky guess. But her smile was knowing, secretive. Or maybe not so lucky. The pieces began clicking together like a puzzle I hadn't known I was solving. The way she'd talked about choreography, the timing of her texts, the familiar cadence of her speech, the way she seemed to understand me so completely. It's you, I whispered. Hope, my dance spirit stepped closer. The rain hammered against the roof, creating a cocoon of sound around us. 5 years of waiting to meet you, she said, her voice low and intimate. And here you are. But how? Why didn't you? Tell you? She reached up, tucking a strand of wet hair behind my ear. Because I was scared. Because I thought if you knew I was a woman, you might stop talking to me. Because I was falling in love with you through a screen, and I didn't know how to make it real. I stared at her, my mind reeling. 5 years of messages, of late-night conversations, of falling asleep with my phone in my hand after texting until dawn. 5 years of loving someone I thought I'd never meet, and here she was, close enough to touch. I can't believe it's you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Believe it. She stepped closer, and I could smell her shampoo, something herbal and clean. I've been watching you dance at the studio downtown. I've been to 3 of your performances. I know the way you bite your lip when you're concentrating, and I know that you always stretch your left ankle twice as long as your right because it's tighter. You've been watching me. I've been falling in love with you all over again, in person this time. Her hand cupped my cheek. Rebecca, I didn't let her finish. 5 years of wondering, of longing, of loving someone through words alone, and suddenly she was here, real and warm and mine. I kissed her like I was drowning and she was air, like I was lost and she was home. Her lips were soft and sure, and when she kissed me back, I felt something inside me snap into place. This was right. This was real. This was everything I'd been afraid to hope for. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against mine. I've wanted to do that for 5 years. Only 5 years? I teased, my heart still racing. Well, maybe longer. I've been dreaming about you since before I knew your name. The storm showed no signs of letting up, and honestly, I didn't want it to. This small cabin had become the most perfect place in the world. The place where my virtual love had become flesh and blood. Where 5 years of secrets had transformed into something tangible and beautiful. Tell me everything, I said, settling onto the bench beside her. How did you find me? How long have you known? Hope, I was still getting used to having a name for her, smiled and took my hand. It's a long story. We have time. She squeezed my fingers. I've been teaching at the gym next to your studio for 2 years. I started noticing you through the window, this beautiful dancer who moved like water, like music made visible. I had no idea you were the same person I'd been talking to online until about 6 months ago. What gave it away? You were practicing that piece you told me about, the one about being trapped between 2 worlds. I've been helping you work through the choreography via text and seeing you dance it. It was like watching my own words come to life. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. You've been helping me with choreography this whole time, and I didn't know you were a choreographer. I've been a lot of things you didn't know, she said softly. But everything I told you about my feelings, about caring for you, about believing in your talent, all of that was real. The realest thing in my life. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Hope was quiet for a moment, looking out at the rain. Because I was scared you'd think I was a stalker. Because I was scared you'd only been talking to me because you thought I was a man. Because I was scared that meeting in person would ruin what we had. And now, she turned back to me, her eyes bright. Now I'm scared that I've waited too long, that I've already ruined it by keeping this secret. I kissed her again, softer this time, trying to pour all my reassurance into the contact. You haven't ruined anything. You've made it better. You've made it real. We spent the next hour in that cabin, talking and kissing and marveling at the strange turn our day had taken. Hope told me about her dreams of starting her own dance company, about the pieces she'd been working on, about the way she'd fallen in love with contemporary dance after seeing a performance that had made her cry. I told her about my fears, about the audition, about the way her messages had been the bright spot in so many dark days. I have something to tell you, she said as the rain finally began to soften. Something I've been trying to work up the courage to say. My heart clenched. What? I got offered a position in Paris with a contemporary dance company there. She wouldn't meet my eyes as a choreographer. The words hit me like a physical blow. Paris. It's everything I've ever wanted professionally. The chance to work with world-class dancers, to create pieces that will be seen by audiences I've only dreamed of reaching. But I heard the question in my own voice, the hope I was trying to hide. But it would mean leaving you again, and I just found you. I stood up, pacing the small space of the cabin. When? They want me to start in the fall. 3 months from now. 3 months. Just long enough to fall completely in love with her in person. Just long enough to build a life together. Just long enough to make leaving devastating. You have to go, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Do I? Hope this is your dream. I can't be the reason you don't chase it. She stood too, crossing to where I'd stopped by the window. What if I told you that you've become part of my dream? What if I told you that the thought of being in Paris without you feels like exile? I wanted to tell her to stay. I wanted to beg her to choose me, to choose us, to choose this feeling that was so new and so right. But I'd spent 5 years listening to her talk about her ambitions, her desire to create something meaningful with her art. I couldn't be the thing that held her back. I'll wait, I said finally. However long it takes, I'll wait for you. That's not fair to you. It's not fair to you to give up your dreams for someone you just met in person. But I've known you for 5 years. I've loved you for 5 years, and I've loved you too, which is why I can't let you stay. We stood there in the dim light of the cabin, the rain now just a gentle patter on the roof, facing a choice that felt impossible. Love or dreams, security or adventure. The known or the unknown. There's another option, Hope said quietly. What? You could come with me. The suggestion hung between us like a challenge. Paris, the city of lights, of art, of possibilities I'd never allowed myself to imagine, but also the city of unknowns, of language barriers, of leaving everything familiar behind. I can't, I said automatically. The addition my life here, your life here is what, exactly? A studio apartment and a series of rejections? Rebecca, you're brilliant. You could dance anywhere. But I don't speak French. I don't know anyone. You'd know me. She made it sound so simple, so obvious. Pack up my life, leave everything I'd known. Follow a woman I'd loved for 5 years, but had only met in person a few hours ago. It was crazy. It was impossible. It was terrifying. It was also tempting. I need time to think, I said. Of course. I'm not asking you to decide right now. I just ... I wanted you to know that the option exists. That you don't have to wait for me because I don't want to go without you. The rain had stopped completely, and we could hear voices outside. The other hikers regrouping, probably wondering where we'd disappeared to. Our perfect private moment was about to end, and I felt a flutter of panic. What if this was it? What if once we stepped outside, the magic would dissipate, and we'd go back to being strangers? What happens now? I asked. Now we go back to the real world, Hope said, reading my thoughts. But this time we go together. No more screens between us, no more secrets. And if I decide I can't go to Paris, then we figure out another way. We've waited 5 years to be together. I'm not giving up on us now. She kissed me once more, and this time it felt like a promise. A promise that whatever happened next, we'd face it together. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Hope. and I were inseparable, making up for 5 years of virtual intimacy with constant physical presence. We hiked again, this time with better weather and without the dramatic revelation. We danced together in my studio, and I discovered that our bodies moved together as naturally as our minds had always connected. We talked until dawn and fell asleep, tangled together, and I wondered how I'd ever lived without her touch. But the Paris offer loomed over everything, a ticking clock that made every moment feel precious and finite. Hope was patient, never pressuring me to decide, but I could see the conflict in her eyes. She wanted to go, wanted to chase this dream, but she also wanted to stay with me. 2 days before my audition, I was in the studio practicing when Hope arrived with coffee, and the expression I'd learned meant she had something important to say. "I need to tell you something," she said, settling into the chair where she'd taken to watching me rehearse. My heart clenched. "You're leaving?" "No. Well, maybe. I don't know." She ran her hands through her hair, a gesture I'd learned meant she was stressed. "I got another offer. Another job." "Not a job, a partnership. There's a contemporary dance company in Atlanta that wants to expand. They're looking for a choreographer to help them develop a new program, and they want someone who can also teach. Atlanta. Not Paris, but not New Orleans either. Close enough to visit, far enough to feel. Like a compromise. What would that mean for us? It would mean I could stay in the States. It would mean weekends together, holidays, a future that doesn't require an ocean between us. I stopped stretching and looked at her. "But it's not what you want?" "Not really." "How do you know what I want?" "Because I've been listening to you dream about Paris for 5 years. Because I know you hope. I know that settling for less than your dreams will make you resentful, even if you don't mean for it to." She was quiet for a long moment. "You're right. Paris is what I want, but I want you more. That's not a choice you should have to make, but it's the choice I am making. I'm choosing you." I felt tears prick at my eyes. "I can't let you do that. You can't stop me." We stared at each other across the studio, both of us crying now, both of us knowing that love sometimes means making impossible choices. I thought about the woman I'd been 5 years ago, before Dance Spirit had entered my life. Scared, isolated, convinced that I wasn't good enough for anything or anyone. And I thought about the woman I'd become through loving Hope, even from a distance. Braver, more confident, more willing to take risks. "What if we didn't have to choose?" I said suddenly. "What do you mean?" I crossed to my bag, pulling out my laptop. "I've been thinking about something, about us, about what we both want." I opened the computer, showing her the document I'd been working on for the past week. "What if we started our own company here in New Orleans? What if we took everything we've learned, everything we've dreamed about, and built it together?" Hope's eyes widened as she read. "Crescent City Contemporary Dance. We could start small. Teach classes, develop pieces, build an audience. You could choreograph, I could dance, and we could create something that's entirely ours. Rebecca, this is incredible. But are you sure? Starting a company is a huge risk. There's no guarantee it would work. There's no guarantee anything would work. But at least we'd fail together." She was quiet for a long moment, reading through the business plan I'd put together. "You've really thought this through?" "I've thought about us. About what we both want. You want to create, I want to dance. You want to build something meaningful. I want to be part of something bigger than myself. We could do that here, together. But what about Paris? What about the opportunity?" I closed the laptop and took her hands. "Paris will always be there. But this moment, this chance to build something with you, this might not come again." "You'd give up your audition for this?" I'd give up anything for this, for us. Hope pulled me into her arms, and I felt her body shake with emotion. I love you, she whispered against my hair. I love you so much it scares me. I love you, too, which is why I know we can do this together. She pulled back to look at me, her eyes bright with tears and something that looked like hope. Crescent City Contemporary Dance, our name in lights, our dreams made real, together. She kissed me then, and it tasted like yes, like promises, like the future we were choosing to build together. The audition came and went. I danced. Well, better than I ever had before, but my heart wasn't in it the way it had been before. I was dancing for hope now, for us, for the company we were going to build together. When they called to tell me I'd made it into the summer intensive, I thanked them politely and declined. Are you sure? Asked the director, clearly confused. This is a wonderful opportunity. I'm sure, I said, looking at Hope, who was sitting beside me on my tiny couch. I have a better opportunity. Within a month, we'd found a space to rent. A converted warehouse in the arts district with high ceilings and enough room for classes and rehearsals. Within 2 months, we'd registered the business and started teaching our first classes. Within 3 months, we were choreographing our first piece together, a duet about long-distance love that somehow became real. The company grew slowly, but steadily. We taught classes during the day and worked on choreography at night. We applied for grants, performed at local festivals, and gradually built an audience of people who appreciated what we were trying to do. It was hard work, harder than I'd ever imagined, but it was also the most fulfilling thing I'd ever done. Do you ever regret it? Hope asked one evening as we worked late in the studio. Not taking the intensive? Not pushing harder for the traditional path? I looked at her, sweaty and exhausted from a day of teaching and rehearsing, her hair escaping from its ponytail, her eyes bright with the passion that had first drawn me to her through a screen 5 years ago. Never, I said. This is better than anything I could have imagined. Even when we're eating ramen for the 4th night in a row because we spent our budget on new sound equipment. Especially then. She laughed, the sound that had become the soundtrack to my happiness. I have something to tell you. My heart skipped, the way it always did when she said those words. What? I got a call today from the Paris company. I felt my stomach drop, and they want to know if I'd be interested in choreographing a piece for their next season. As a guest artist, just for one piece, not a permanent position. Hope, that's incredible. That's everything you wanted. Part of everything I wanted. She crossed to where I was sitting, kneeling in front of me, but I told them I'd have to think about it because I don't want to go alone. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe we could arrange a European tour for the company. Maybe we could spend a few months in Paris, working with their dancers, learning from their process, and then come home to New Orleans with new ideas and experiences. You want to take the company to Europe. I want to take you to Europe. I want to show you the city I dreamed about. I want to dance with you on stages I've only imagined. I want to share all of it with you. I felt tears spring to my eyes. Hope ... We've built something beautiful here, Rebecca. But there's no reason. We can't expand it, grow it, take it to places we've never been. Together. Are you proposing we become an international dance company? I'm proposing we become whatever we want to be. As long as we do it together. I kissed her then, tasting salt and possibility, tasting the future we were writing together one choice at a time. 1 year later, we were performing our debut piece for a sold-out crowd at the Mahalia Jackson Theater. The piece was called Digital Hearts, and it told the story of 2 people who found love in the most unexpected way, who built trust through screens and faith through distance, who discovered that the most profound connections sometimes begin with the courage to be vulnerable with strangers. As I took my bow, I saw hope in the wings, her face glowing with pride and love. The audience was on their feet, applauding not just our performance, but our story, our courage, our decision to choose love over fear. After the curtain came down, as we were catching our breath in the controlled chaos backstage, Hope suddenly went very still. "What is it?" I asked, following her gaze. She was staring at something in her hands, her face pale. I have something to ask you." "Hope, what?" She dropped to one knee right there in the middle of the backstage area, pulling out a small velvet box. The noise around us faded to nothing, and suddenly it was just her and me, and the question I'd been hoping for without knowing. "I was hoping for it." "Rebecca," she said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "5 years ago, I fell in love with your words. 3 years ago, I fell in love with your movement. 1 year ago, I fell in love with your courage. Today, I fell in love with your artistry all over again." She opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring that caught the stage lights and threw rainbows across the concrete floor. "I don't want to love you from a distance anymore. I don't want to love you in secret. I want to love you in front of everyone for the rest of my life." Her voice broke. "Marry me?" The backstage area had gone completely silent. Dancers, crew members, everyone had stopped what they were doing to witness this moment. I looked down at Hope, this woman who had been my anchor, my inspiration, my partner in every sense of the word, and I felt my heart expand to accommodate all the love I felt for her. "Yes," I whispered, then louder. "Yes, yes, yes." The ring slid onto my finger like it belonged there, like it had always belonged there, and when Hope stood up to kiss me, the entire theater erupted in cheers. Our cast, our crew, our friends and family who had supported us through every crazy dream and impossible choice, they were all there, celebrating with us, celebrating love that had refused to be contained by distance or fear or convention. "I love you," Hope whispered against my lips. "I love you so much." "I love you too," I whispered back. Forever, as we held each other in the chaos of congratulations and excitement, I thought about the girl I'd been 5 years ago, typing lonely messages to a stranger in the middle of the night. I thought about the woman I'd become, brave enough to love completely, to risk everything, to build a life that was entirely our own. Some people say that love found in unconventional ways isn't as real as love found in person, but digital relationships are somehow less valid, less meaningful, but they're wrong. Love is love, regardless of how it begins. What matters is what you do with it once you find it, how you nurture it, how you choose to honor it. Hope and I chose to honor our love by building something beautiful together. We chose to trust it enough to risk everything. We chose to let it grow beyond the boundaries we'd originally set for it. 6 months later, we were in Paris, performing Digital Hearts for audiences who had never heard our story but understood our message. Love transcends distance. Love transcends fear. Love transcends the limitations we place on ourselves. The company continued to grow, continued to evolve, continued to challenge both of us in ways we'd never anticipated. We performed across Europe, then back home in New Orleans, then across the United States. We taught workshops, mentored young dancers, and built a community of artists who believed in the power of authentic storytelling through movement. But more than that, we built a life together. A life that began with secrets and grew into something so beautiful, so real, so true that sometimes I had to pinch myself to make sure I wasn't dreaming. On our wedding day, 2 years after that first kiss in the trail cabin, I stood at the altar in a small ceremony in New Orleans, surrounded by everyone who had supported us, everyone who had believed in our crazy dream of starting a dance company, Everyone who had watched us fall in love in the most public and beautiful way possible. The ceremony was held in the courtyard of our studio, fairy lights strung between the oak trees, the same space where we'd spent countless hours perfecting our craft and building our dreams. Lena was my maid of honor, of course, and she spent the entire ceremony crying happy tears and whispering, "I told you so," every few minutes. You know, she said as she helped me with my veil, "I always knew that hike would change your life. I just didn't know it would change it this much." "You couldn't have known," I said, adjusting the simple white dress I'd chosen. "None of us could have known." But that's the beautiful thing about love, isn't it? It finds you when you're not looking, when you're not ready, when you think you've got everything figured out. She was right. 5 years ago, I'd been a different person entirely. Scared, isolated, convinced that I wasn't worthy of the kind of love I saw in movies. Now I was about to marry the woman who had seen me at my most vulnerable, who had believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, who had chosen to build a life with me despite every obstacle we'd faced. Hope looked radiant in her navy blue dress, her hair swept up in an elegant chignon that showed off the diamond earrings I'd given her for her birthday. When she saw me walking down the aisle, her face lit up with the same smile I'd fallen in love with through text messages, the same smile that had rescued me from that rainy trail, the same smile that had said yes to every crazy dream we'd shared. "You look beautiful," she whispered when I reached her. "So do you," I whispered back, and meant it with every fiber of my being. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. We'd written our own vows, of course, because how do you sum up a love story? Like ours with traditional words? Hope went first, her voice clear and strong as she spoke about digital hearts and real love, about the courage it takes to be vulnerable with a stranger, and the trust it takes to build a life with someone. "Rebecca," she said, her eyes locked on mine, "you taught me that love isn't about being in the same place at the same time. It's about being willing to meet someone where they are, to grow with them, to dream with them, to create something beautiful together regardless of the obstacles." When it was my turn, I felt the words pour out of me like water, like movement, like the truest thing I'd ever said. "Hope, you saved me in ways you don't even know. You gave me courage when I had none, belief when I couldn't find it in myself, and love when I thought I wasn't worthy of it. You turned my loneliness into connection, my fear into bravery, my dreams into reality. I promise to love you not just in the easy moments, but in the hard ones. Not just when we're dancing together, but when we're stumbling. Not just when we're creating something beautiful, but when we're just being human together." There wasn't a dry eye in the courtyard by the time we exchanged rings. The same ring Hope had given me after our debut performance, now joined by a matching band that symbolized our commitment to grow together, to face whatever came next as a team. "You may kiss the bride," said the officiant, and Hope didn't need to be told twice. The kiss was soft and sweet and full of promise, and when we broke apart, I saw our entire future stretching out before us. More performances, more travels, more dreams to chase together. Maybe children someday, maybe new artistic ventures, maybe challenges we couldn't yet imagine. But whatever came, we'd face it together. The reception was held right there in the courtyard, with food from our favorite New Orleans restaurants and music from a jazz quartet that had become friends of the company. We danced our first dance to "At Last" by Etta James because it felt appropriate for two people who had waited so long to find each other. "Any regrets?" Hope asked as we swayed together under the stars. "Only that it took us so long to get here," I said, and I meant it. "We got here exactly when we were supposed." "Tio," she said, spinning me gently. Every step of the journey brought us to this moment. As the night wound down and our guests began to leave, I found myself standing in the doorway of our studio, watching Hope clean up champagne glasses and laughing with our friends. This woman who had been my secret for so long was now my wife, my partner, my collaborator in every sense of the word. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, coming to stand beside me. "Everything, nothing. How lucky I am. How scared I was 5 years ago to even admit I was lonely. And now look at us." "Now look at us," she agreed, wrapping her arms around me from behind. "Mrs. and Mrs. Crescent City Contemporary Dance." We'd hyphenated our names, both becoming Rebecca and Hope Laurent Mitchell, because we wanted to carry pieces of each other into our new life together. It felt symbolic somehow, this blending of identities, this creation of something entirely new while honoring what we've been before. "I have a confession," Hope said as we locked up the studio and headed home to our apartment. "What?" "I've been working on a new piece, a surprise for you." "What kind of surprise?" "The kind that tells the story of two people who found love in the most unexpected way and built something beautiful together. The kind that celebrates not just where we've been, but where we're going." I stopped walking and turned to face her. "You choreographed our story. I choreographed our future. All the dreams we haven't chased yet, all the places we haven't been, all the ways we're still growing together. Can I see it? On our 1-year wedding anniversary, it's my gift to you. To us." I kissed her then, right there on the sidewalk in the French Quarter, surrounded by the sounds of the city that had become our home. The city where we built our love into something tangible and real. The months that followed were a blur of performances and classes and the daily work of building a life together. We traveled to dance festivals, taught workshops at universities, and slowly gained recognition in the contemporary dance world. Critics started paying attention to our work, calling it innovative and deeply personal, and a fresh voice in American dance. But more than professional success, we found personal fulfillment. We discovered that we were even better partners in marriage than we had been in courtship. We learned each other's rhythms, supported each other's growth, and created a home that felt like a sanctuary from the outside world. "Do you ever miss it?" I asked one evening as we cooked dinner together in our slightly larger apartment. "The mystery, the not knowing." "Miss what?" "The way it was before. When we were just voices in the dark, when everything was possibility and potential." Hope considered this as she stirred the pasta sauce. "I miss the anticipation sometimes, the way my heart would race when I saw a message from you, but I don't miss the uncertainty. I don't miss wondering if you were real, if what we had was real." "It was always real," I said, wrapping my arms around her waist from behind. "Even when it was just words on a screen. I know that now. But then then I was always afraid you'd disappear. That I'd wake up one day and you'd be gone, and I'd never know why. I could never disappear on you. Even before I knew who you were the most important person in my life. And now you're my wife. Now you're my partner. Now you're the person I choose every single day." She turned in my arms, and I saw tears in her eyes. "I choose you too. Every day, every moment, every breath." Our 1-year wedding anniversary arrived with the kind of perfect spring weather that makes New Orleans feel like paradise. Hope had been secretive for weeks, disappearing to the studio at odd hours and whispering into her phone when she thought I wasn't listening. I knew she was working on the piece she'd promised me, but I had no idea what to expect. "Close your eyes," she said as we entered the studio that evening, "and don't open them until I tell you to." I heard her moving around, setting up music, adjusting lights. Then I heard the sound of her bare feet on the wooden floor, the whisper of fabric as she moved into position. "Open them," she said softly. What I saw took my breath away. Hope was positioned center stage, wearing a flowing white dress that caught the light like water. But it wasn't just her appearance that stunned me, it was the way she began to move. like she was typing on an invisible keyboard, like she was reaching through a screen to touch someone she couldn't see. The music began, something ethereal and haunting, and Hope started to dance the story of our love. I saw our late night conversations in the way she moved her arms, reaching and grasping and connecting with empty air. I saw our first meeting on the trail in the way she stumbled and caught herself, the way she looked around as if seeing the world for the first time. Then the music shifted, became more urgent, and Hope began to dance with a partner who wasn't there. But somehow, through the power of her movement, I could see me. I could see us. I could see the moment in the cabin when everything changed, when virtual became real, when two separate people became one unified love story. The peace moved through our journey, the fear, the doubt, the decision to start the company, the late nights and early mornings, the gradual building of trust and intimacy and partnership. It was beautiful and heartbreaking and hopeful all at once, but the most stunning part came at the end. Hope moved to the edge of the stage, looked directly at me, and began to dance the future. I saw us growing old together, saw us teaching the next generation of dancers, saw us traveling to places we'd only dreamed of. I saw our children, learning to move with the same grace and passion we discovered in each other. When the music ended, Hope was kneeling where she'd started, arms outstretched toward me, tears streaming down her face. That was ... I couldn't find words. That was us. That was us, she agreed. All of us, past, present, and future. I walked onto the stage, pulled her into my arms, and kissed her like it was the first time and the last time and every time. In between, I love you, I whispered against her lips. I love you so much it feels like my heart might burst. I love you too, forever and always and in every way possible. As we held each other in the dim light of the studio, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From lonely strangers typing in the dark to partners in art and life and love. From secrets to truth, from fear to courage, from virtual to real. What happens now? I asked the same question I'd asked in the trail cabin all those years ago. Now we keep dancing, Hope said. We keep creating. We keep choosing each other. We keep building something beautiful together. And if we get scared, then we remember that we've already survived the scariest part. We've already taken the biggest risk. Everything else is just dancing. She was right. We'd already done the hardest thing. We'd trusted each other with our hearts. We'd been brave enough to turn a digital love into a real one, to build a life together despite every reason to be afraid. The years that followed were filled with more adventures than I could have imagined. We took the company international, performing in theaters I'd only seen in magazines. We opened a second location in New York, then a third in Los Angeles. We created a scholarship program for young dancers who couldn't afford training, remembering our own struggles and wanting to make the path easier for others. But most importantly, we kept growing together. We learned that love isn't just about the grand gestures, the trail cabin revelation, the proposal, the wedding. It's about the daily choice to see each other, to support each other, to create space for each other to bloom. We had our fights, of course, about artistic direction, about money, about whose turn it was to do the dishes. But we also had our reconciliations, our moments of breakthrough, our quiet evenings where we remembered why we'd chosen each other in the first place. Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if Lena hadn't forced me to go on that hike? I asked one evening as we sat on the porch of the house we'd bought in the Garden District. Sometimes, Hope said, reaching for my hand. But then I remember that we found each other online first. We would have found each other eventually, one way or another. How can you be so sure? Because what we have is bigger than circumstance. It's bigger than timing or location or any of the practical things that usually determine whether people meet. We were meant to find each other. You really believe that? I believe that some connections transcend the normal rules. I believe that some people are meant to be together, and the universe will find a way to make it happen. I squeezed her hand, feeling the familiar warmth of her skin against mine. I love your romantic view of the world. I love that you let me have it. As I sit here now, 10 years after that first message from Dan's spirit, 7 years after, that first kiss in the trail cabin, 5 years after our wedding, I can honestly say that our love story is still being written. There are chapters yet to come, adventures yet to be had, dreams yet to be chased. But what I know for certain is this: love finds you when you're brave enough to be vulnerable. Love grows when you're willing to trust someone with your authentic self. Love becomes real when you choose to build something together, day by day, choice by choice, dance by dance. My name is Rebecca Laurent Mitchell, and this is the story of how I fell in love with a ghost who became flesh, how I learned to trust a stranger who became my soulmate, how I discovered that the most profound connections can begin with the simplest act of reaching out into the darkness and hoping someone reaches back. Some people say that digital love isn't real love, that virtual relationships are somehow less valid, less meaningful, less true, but they're wrong. Love is love, regardless of how it begins. What matters is what you do with it once you find it, how you nurture it, how you choose to honor it with your actions and your choices, and your unwavering commitment to growth. Hope and I chose to honor our love by building something beautiful together. We chose to trust it enough to risk everything. We chose to let it grow beyond the boundaries we'd originally set for it. We chose to make it real in every way that mattered, and in the end, that's what love is: a choice. A daily, moment-by-moment choice to see each other, to support each other, to dance together through whatever music life plays. The music is still playing, and we're still dancing, and I wouldn't have it any other way.